Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk 24 weeks, give you a little update, a little bump date, let you know what's going on, any changes, and then we're going to talk about baby names. Well, actually, you can probably tell by the title of this video, we're going to talk about baby names that we loved but won't be using. So come on, let's chat. Today is Monday, January 11th, and I am 24 weeks pregnant. There's one huge milestone this week that I'm really excited about. 24 weeks is the first week of viability. This means that at this point in my pregnancy at 24 weeks, if something were to happen, the chances of baby being able to survive outside of the womb, even though they would be very premature, those chances are really high and really likely. And that is really thrilling for us because we have experienced loss, and even though my loss is really early, it is something that's really present in my mind and has been throughout this pregnancy. And so because of that, it's something that feels like a celebration day. It feels like, okay, if something happens from here on out, there are good chances that baby can survive. Baby is now the size of an eggplant, a G.I. Joe, a baguette, or a puffin. Puffins are one of my favorite animals, and I'd never seen one in the wild until we moved to Alaska, and it just made it better. They are so adorable, and the thought that the size of a puffin is the size of my baby is really cute. And since we don't know if it's a boy or a girl, and we don't have, well, we do have names picked out, but we're not referring to the baby by their name because, again, we don't know what their name is because we don't know if it's a boy or a girl. Maybe I'll just start calling the baby my little puffin. Before this week in my videos, I would say I haven't really had any cravings. And I still don't know that I would classify this as a craving, but I cannot get enough cheeseburgers. If you know me, you know that I was a vegetarian before I got pregnant, and I wasn't eating cheeseburgers, and I have probably had 3, maybe 4 cheeseburgers this past week. I really love a junior bacon cheeseburger from Wendy's. In fact, I've been joking with Brian that we're gonna have to name this child Wendy because I've eaten so many junior bacon cheeseburgers so far. And I just love a big, juicy cheeseburger. I don't want anything on it. I just want bread, ketchup, cheese, occasionally bacon if I know the restaurant makes good bacon, and that's it. And it's just delicious to me, and I could eat one every single day. Usually these cheeseburgers need to be followed by a chocolate milkshake because of course. So really healthy cravings, just kidding. I'm not beating myself up about this. You gotta eat what baby requests. I've been thinking about this, like, this baby is just a little, they're just ordering off the room service menu and it's open 24/7 and they can have whatever they want. And if they want cheeseburgers every day, then, well, I don't know that we'll have cheeseburgers every day, but we will occasionally have a really good cheeseburger. Delicious. Now I want one. So my pregnancy app this week says that baby is starting to grow bigger. Obviously, that's been the case all throughout this pregnancy. But because of that, I might start to see some skin issues popping up. So far, I haven't really had that. One thing mentioned was acne. I haven't really had a ton of acne other than days where I haven't been washing my face like I should. I haven't had any melasma or any like blotching or spotting on my face. And my belly hasn't been crazy itchy, which is good, and I don't have a rash or anything like that. So nothing skin-wise so far, but I do know that those could pop up this week or in the next couple of weeks. I'm also keeping a lookout for swelling. So last week I talked about how my rings weren't fitting me, and I didn't think it was because of swelling. I thought it was more because of weight gain. I stand by that, but I am trying to keep an eye on my feet. I know they're gonna swell a little bit, probably by the time this is all done with, but I want to keep an eye on them because I don't want them to be swelling too much. The great thing is, no matter what I weigh, I have really bony feet, really skinny toes, and it's really easy to tell when they are a little bit swollen, so that's been easy to look out for. This week, baby is starting to develop their taste buds, their lungs, and they're starting to get hair, so they should by now have a full, beautiful set of eyelashes. I'm almost positive that they'll have Brian's eyelashes. He has these like huge, beautiful, long black eyelashes. And aren't the good eyelashes always wasted on the people who don't wear makeup? It's so frustrating. But he has these big long, beautiful eyelashes and these big, thick, full eyebrows and this beautiful head of dark hair. And so I'm like, oh, I wonder if the baby's got a full head of dark hair. And I'm sure that within a month or so, my heartburn will let me know that that baby has a full head of hair. And because Brian and I both have a lot of hair, so my hair is really thick. It's kind of flat right now, but I have really thick hair and it grows really fast, and Brian has really thick hair. So we have every expectation that this baby will be born with just like a head full of hair. I would be more surprised if baby came out and didn't have hair, honestly, or had blonde hair. How weird would that be? So baby is probably about 13 inches long and weighing just under 1.5 pounds. Something else I've noticed, and in order to show this, I will probably have to take my hair out of the pin that I have it in. I don't mind having gray hairs. I'm not one of those people that's like, oh, I have gray hairs, I have to pluck them out, I have to color them. I think gray hair is completely gorgeous. And the only thing I love more than a full head of gray hair is when someone is starting to gray and so that it's like kind of speckled in between. I just think it's so beautiful. But anyway, I have always had a few little, Brian calls them my sparkly hairs. Isn't that so sweet? I've always had a few little sparkly hairs kind of mixed in throughout. But this week I noticed, and I don't know if this is hormonal or if this is completely unrelated to pregnancy, but I didn't notice it until this week. I have some gray hairs here on this side of my head, maybe here too, but I haven't inspected as well, that are really, I feel like I have a lot more, like maybe they've doubled or tripled. Of course I'm gonna wanna show this and I'm not gonna be able to, but see that big sparkly one there? Of course they're all hiding. Yeah, of course I can't get them to show up now because I want them to, but anyway. Notice that I'm getting possibly more gray hair, or maybe they're sticking out more. I don't know what's going on, but I'm totally okay with it because I think it's really pretty. And I think gray, again, I think gray hair is beautiful, so I'm totally fine with having some grays. Water break. This week I want to chat about names that we liked but we won't be using. Now, I want to clarify a few things here. First of all, let me reiterate, we liked these names. These were names that either I really liked or Brian really liked or we both really liked, but they didn't flow with our last name. So if you have a baby with one of these names, please know that we're not like, that's a dumb name. We don't feel that way at all. We actually love these names, but we just couldn't agree that that was what this baby's name was. I also want to say that we were really careful. Well, I was really careful. It's really important to me that our kid is not one of many within their class with the same name. So when I was growing up, I was always Girl Taylor or Taylor B. So there was always like a boy Taylor in my class. It was like Boy Taylor and Girl Taylor. Or I was Taylor B for my maiden name. I didn't like that. I was like, I'm just Taylor. Like, I just want to be, and I understand, you know, that as a teacher, definitely I understand you have to differentiate between two kids with the same name, but it was just always frustrating to me that I didn't get my own identity. So I've always wanted to have kids who had names that were different. Now, not totally wild out there, super crazy, but just different names that you don't hear every day, names that are more rare. And so I was really careful. I looked through the top 50 and then I was like, well, 50 is kind of a lot. And so I looked through the top like 20, 25, 30, 40 names that are the most popular. And that's really easy to find. In fact, I'll link it in the description box. It's just on the Social Security website. So they don't have the 2020 statistics in yet, but you can look up in 2019, I think it goes up to 100 most popular names of that year, the names that had the most babies named that in a year. And they have a girl list and a boy list. And so I tried really hard when we were coming up with names for the baby. I didn't want anything in like the top 25 or 30 names. So that is one way, like I kind of nixed all of those names, even the ones that were really cute, and there were some cute ones. Oliver was in there. I love that name. It is so, so cute, but it's really popular. Like it was in like the top 10, and there's a lot of girl names that were just so beautiful, but just too popular. I don't want, when my kid starts going to school, I don't want them to be one of many in the class. We had a discussion about this, Brian and I, and he said, huh, you know, I don't actually know that I ever had another Brian in my class. That baffles me because I think Brian's a more common name than Taylor, but maybe, you know, he lived in a small town, so maybe he just had a lot of luck there, or just the year he was born was not a year for Brian's, I don't know. But I think it's so funny that he never went to school with another Brian. I don't know, that's crazy. So when we started talking about baby names, let me introduce to you this composition book. I just saw my neighbor take the trash out and she's probably like, what are you doing? Okay, I have had this notebook definitely since college, but possibly before, and I filled it. Not filled it, it's not full. But I have pages and pages and pages of names that I liked, their meanings, their origin, and then if they're kind of strange, I had their pronunciation as well. And these are all, I did go through these and there were a lot that I was like, what was I thinking? And then there were a lot that I was like, that's actually a really good name, but in the years past since the name came up, I'm like, I don't know. Or I met someone, I'm like, well, that's that person's name. That can't be my baby's name. So this was something we used when coming up with the baby names we're actually gonna possibly use for our baby. And some of the names that I had saved in here are names that when I presented them to Brian, he was like, I like that name, but I just don't know that it flows, or I just don't know that I like it enough. Or I would say, what about this name that I wrote down? And then the more I thought about it, the more I was like, no, that's not it either. I don't know. None of them just really felt right. We have actually decided on the baby's name, depending on if they're a boy or a girl. But when we were deciding, it was a constant conversation for about 2 or 3 weeks. And we kind of settled down on what we're gonna use the name. We won't be telling you those today. I'm not going to tell you those names today because that is gonna be a secret until baby gets here. So without further ado, I'm going to do all the boys and then all the girls. So I have 5 boy names and 5 girl names to share with you. Let's start with the boys list. The first boy name that I loved, but we're not gonna use because it just, I just couldn't make it sound right, is Donovan. I love the name Donovan. Sometimes when you're a teacher, names pop up and you're like, well, I could never name my kid that because that's that kid. And then you have a kid where like, that kid is so special that you just, it makes the name bright and sparkly and you like it even more. And Donovan is one of those names. I have taught one Donovan in the 5-ish years that I taught pre-K. I had one student named Donovan. Oh my gosh, he was so precious. He was so kind. He was so cuddly, and he liked to tell jokes, and that was just really funny to me too. And so that name became really cute to me. However, as much as I love the name Donovan, we're not going to use it because Donovan Deal sounds so silly to me. I don't know if it sounds like a used car salesman or if it sounds like, I don't know. Actually, it reminds me of a scene from 30 Rock where Liz Lemon is talking to Jack Donaghy and she's going through baby names that they had talked about. One of the names was Daphne, and Liz Lemon, I wish I had my glasses nearby. Liz Lemon puts her glasses on like crooked and she's like, I'm Daphne Donaghy, I saw a turtle. And so now when I think of Donovan Deal, that's what it sounds like to me. I'm Donovan Deal and I saw a turtle. It kind of ruined the name for me, but it's such a good name. Donovan is actually an Irish baby name and it means dark or dark haired. Some of you know that I love baby name videos, so I am just gonna throw in at the end here like what the names mean and their origin because I just love baby names, and just because I'm not using them or they sound silly with my last name doesn't mean that you shouldn't use them because they're just good names. I really do think these are good names. They're just names that we're not gonna use. The next name that I loved, but we won't be using, is Julian. I love the name Julian. It's a Latin name and it means young at heart, and I just think it's such a nice name. I really, really love it. However, this is one that Brian nixed because there is a YouTuber I watch named Julian, and even though I would not be like naming my baby after this YouTuber, I just really liked the name, but Brian was like, I don't know, when I hear Julian, I think of Julian Solomita, so I don't think so. And I was like, okay, I understand that. So we nixed the name Julian, but it's a great name and I really like it. I think it's such a nice name. And you'll notice that I love J names. When I switch over to the girls list, you'll notice there's a few J names there. I also have some J names saved that we're not using for this baby, but that I definitely want to try to use for future babies. So I love J names. I don't know why, I just think they sound really nice. They flow really beautifully. The next name I loved was the name Alex. Brian didn't like this one either, and that's okay. He said he just knows a lot of Alexes. It's really too common. Alex is a Greek name and it means warrior or defender. And I like this name, and this is another name that I had a student named, actually, I've had 2 students named Alex, and they were both just so smart, so funny, so sweet, and I I've always loved that name. I don't know that I would want it to be short for anything. Like I don't know that we were gonna use it like Alexander or Alejandro, but I just like the name Alex. Like I think it's fun, and I love the idea of like having an X in your name, just having like an unusual letter in there, but we're not using it. The next name is a Scottish, Irish, English name, and when I took this name off the baby list, I'm pretty sure that I broke my Southern mama's heart, but the name is Jackson. It doesn't have a fun meaning, it just means son of Jack. The thing about Jackson is, I had a student named Jackson who was really just so sweet and so wonderful, and I also have had a Jackson that was a very challenging student for me to teach. I don't believe that there's good kids and bad kids, but I definitely had a really challenging Jackson, and then right after I had a really wonderful Jackson, and they kind of made a net neutral, like they kind of just met in the middle, and I don't know that it's something that we're gonna use. It's a great name. I love the name Jack. Like I love Jack and Alex and these like short, sweet little boy names, but I don't think we'll be using Jack or Jackson, despite how cute they are, because they're way too popular, and especially in the South. I didn't look at a name list for the South, but you know, Brian and I are both from Georgia, and using a name like Jackson, I think if we ever went back to the South, they would just be one of many Jacksons. So we won't be using that one, even though it's a really great name. The last name on the boys list might be an obvious one or might not be an obvious one, depending on how well you know us. The name Brian. So we're not going to have any juniors in our family, and the reason for that is not because we don't, I mean, we love family names. All of our possible names for this baby, the middle name is a family name. So we love family names, but Brian and I agreed that we didn't want our baby to kind of like live in the shadow or live under the name of one of their parents. We wanted them to be their own person. I think juniors are great if that's something that's really important to your family or your spouse or to you. But for us, we were like, well, we'd rather them have their own name, their own identifier. Brian is a Irish, Gaelic, English name, and it means high noble. Now for the girls' names. We had a lot harder of a time with girls' names. We kind of were on the same page about boy names. A name would come up and we'd both be like, no, that's not it. No, that's not it. No, that's not it. But with girls, it was a little more contentious. It was a little more, I really like this name. And Brian was like, I really don't like this name. But I will give him credit. He was willing to have the conversation with me often. Like I said, we talked about it on a constant loop for several weeks until we decided. But girl names were really tricky because Brian thinks it's a girl, and so I think it was more real for him to think about girl names. I don't know, that's just, I'm kind of just guessing. I don't have any proof that that's how he feels, but here is where you will notice, again, my love for J names. The first name that we loved, well, that I loved, but we won't be using is Jillian. I taught a student, one of my pre-Kers was named Jillian, and she was just a sweet, smart, funny little girl, and I just thought, what a beautiful name, Jillian. I just love that name, and I think it flows really well. It's an English, Irish, Gaelic name, and it means youthful. This is one we won't be using. I don't know what it is about this name that Brian just didn't like. I don't know if it was the flow. With an L at the end of Deal, I think it makes it tricky to flow it. So Jillian Deal is kind of like too straight across, I think. We're very strange. We both want the name to flow. The problem there is that what I think flows is not necessarily what he has thought had a nice flow to it. So we've kind of had to go back and forth. Again, we came to a resolution, but Jillian, we took off the list, even though it's so beautiful and it just reminds me of the sweet little Jillian that I taught. We're not gonna be using it. The next name is Julianne. Now I'm gonna spell this because I don't want a double barrel name. So I don't want Julie Ann, and we would call her Julie. Her first name would be Julianne, and I love this name. I knew a girl growing up, they were a set of twins, and it was Julianne and Marielle, and I just thought those were the prettiest names. They were both singular names, it wasn't a double barrel, and I just thought it was so beautiful. So this is a Latin name, really similar to Julian, so it's a Latin name and it also means youthful, and Brian thought it sounded too fancy, I think is what he said, if I remember correctly. It's just too fancy and too long. So that was another thing we thought, well, that is a long name to learn how to spell and learn how to write. So I'll give him credit for that. And because I didn't want it abbreviated to Julie or Julie Ann, I thought, yeah, you're probably right on this one. So we won't be using Julianne. The next name is a French name. It means life. The name is Vivienne, and we would probably call her Vivi for short. I thought that name was so cute. It's so beautiful and kind of different. You know, maybe she would be the only Vivi or the only Vivian in her class, and it just makes me think of this like short, spunky little girl who is just loads of fun to be around. And Ryan didn't agree. He said it was kind of the same, in the same reasoning as Julianne. So it was just a little too fancy and a little too long. So we decided against it, and that's okay. It's still a really beautiful name, and I hope that it continues to be sort of popular because it's such a nice name. It's so beautiful, Vivienne. And I think it's pretty. Vivienne. So that's another name that I loved, but we won't be using. Almost all the girl names are names that I loved, but Ryan didn't. Whereas the boy names, we were a little more equally split on them. Maybe I should have titled this video, Names That I Loved, but we marked off the list for various reasons. The next name that I loved, but we won't be using, is Noelle. I think Noelle is a beautiful name. Our baby is not a Christmas baby, but I also thought it might kind of be nice to have a Noelle that's not born in December. I mean, that would be, you know, of course, a baby born in December, you would consider the name Noelle. But I thought, I just think that's so pretty. I love Christmas time. It means Christmas. It's a French name for Christmas. And I just love the name Noelle. I think it's so pretty. And Ryan said no, too Christmassy, too themed, and I'm okay with that. So we won't be using Noelle. The last girl name that we won't be using is kind of a bummer because we both loved the name. Like, we both liked this. We both liked the idea of this being a middle name. And if I remember correctly, it's in our family tree, so it would be a family name, but it just sounds silly with the last name Deal. So that name is Lucille. And I just couldn't get over Lucille Deal. It just sounded too silly to me. And when I think of Lucille, I think of Arrested Development. And so we couldn't use that either, even though it's such a beautiful classic name. Lucille is a French name and it means light. So it's beautiful, but Lucille Deal just sounds a little too silly for us. So we won't be using it. There's very few names that I actually like to have a nickname for. I think some of them are really, really cute. Nickname pairings like Vivian and Vivi, I think that's really cute. But generally speaking, like if I had to make an across the board statement, I don't really care for nicknames. I don't know why that is. I just think like what you're named should be your name. And I mean, I guess I don't mean like a nickname, like your mom calls you this or your dad calls you this. I know people who have nicknames that suit them perfectly, but I just think, I don't know, what I name you is what I want your name to be. And if I wanted to name you, like Alex is a perfect example. If I wanted you to be named Alexander, then I would have called you Alexander, but because I want you to be Alex, I'm just gonna name you Alex. That's just how I feel about nicknames. So we were pretty careful on that because I really didn't want a name that people in the world could shorten for my kid. I was always shortened to Tay-Tay, which I hated. Oh my gosh, I hate being called Tay-Tay. I probably shouldn't put that on the internet because now everyone's gonna be like, hey Tay-Tay. And I don't love Tay, but I have some exceptions. I have some friends that for some reason, the way they say it or how they say it, the sweetness of their voice, I'm like, you can call me Tay. It's okay if you call me that. And my nephews call me Aunt Tay, which I really like. But generally, like, I just really don't like my name abbreviated. I don't really know that my name suits me anyway, but I'm just not for nicknames. So that was another big decider when we were talking about what we were gonna name the baby, is I didn't want anything that someone could abbreviate for them, which is every name. I mean, literally you can abbreviate every name, you can shorten every name, but I wanted something that didn't really lend itself to nicknames. So that's it. As you can tell, I could talk about baby names all day. I love, love, love baby names. I wish that I had thought that would be a good thing to do on YouTube, to talk about baby names, and I could have started a channel, but now there's so many baby name channels that it just feels like the market's kind of flooded for that. So there's not really room for another baby name channel, but also I love baby names. So maybe, maybe this is something that really makes me happy and I'll end up talking about it more, but I love baby names. I've loved them from a young age. I love knowing what names mean, and I think it's really cool to hear what names mean. In that respect, I kind of have boring names because my name is Christian Taylor, Christian just means one who follows Christ. That's not bad. Taylor is one who sews clothes. So it's just, my names don't have like really exciting, like deep, meaningful name meanings. My sister's name is Abigail, which I think is like the father's gift, or the joy of her father, or something like that. So a little bit of a complex there. I got a name that just has no like real deep name meaning, and my sister's is like her father's joy, her father's light. Anyway, I'm getting silly. I'm gonna end this video now. Thank you guys so much for watching this week's video. I hope you had fun at least laughing at me, because I just had the sillies all through this. If you liked this video, you can give it a thumbs up. Leave me a comment. Let me know if you're 24 weeks, how you're feeling, how things are going. Let me know if one of these names you're like, my kid is named that and I love that name, or if you're like, hey, these are names that I loved but we're not gonna use. Let me know. Drop those in the comments below. You can also share this video with a friend. You can subscribe to my channel, and if you hit the bell when you subscribe, it will notify you, give you a little notification, a little ding on your phone to let you know when my video gets posted, so that you can watch it when it gets posted, or whenever you want, you know, on your own timeline. No big deal. Thanks again for watching. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will see you in the next one.